welcome back to Jections, an international break version. I'm your host, Andrew, Miko, Irfan, and Jay with me. And boy, is this going to be a fun episode. We've got a reeling Inter, we've got racial relations, and we've also have some hard-hitting financial analysis. Miko, what's going on?
Thanks. Happy to be back again. You guys did well with the last episode, although it was a bit doom and gloom. But all I'm gonna say is that boys did well against Atletico, and they fought hard, but couldn't made it this time. But it is what it is.
Ah, yes, I forgot that you were absent for our Atletico autopsy, so we could just be unfiltered and negative without your positive being.
Yes.
Irfan, how's your March Madness bracket looking so far?
Who needs March Madness when you've got Inter? Chrissy Inter in full effect, taking Jay's line here, but I think it's been an interesting couple of weeks for us Inter fans. Definitely glad Miko's back because we could use a little bit of optimism. So we'll see how it goes.
Jay, I just have one word for you. Retiro?
In my humble opinion, Interjections is the best football media product on the market right now. Sorry, that doesn't really have anything to do with anything. We're almost at Retiro, yeah. I'll say, only in the world of Inter can so much happen in the span of 1 week. So, crazy Inter in full effect. Let's go.
So, never a dull moment. We're hoping we'd be able to sail into this international break, put the Atletico disaster behind us, and move on to better things. But unfortunately, not the case after the 1-1 draw to Napoli. A disappointing game in many regards. We had opportunities to kill the game. We did not. Of course, pretty much all the takeaways from the match are things that happened off the pitch, or on the pitch, but are happening off the pitch. Let's focus on the actual match itself for now. Miko, as you look at this draw, the team really, once again, stopped playing in the second half. The chances dried up, and it all culminated with us leading former Inter player Juan Jesus pretty much unmarked on a corner. A lot of disappointment following the draw. How worried are you about the state of things?
Do you really ask me? I'm honestly not too worried yet, but I think this match, maybe this was the match which really showed the effect of the Champions League. Although Napoli had their own fixture in the same week as we did, but I think the team looked really tired in this match. We played extra 30 minutes in Madrid, and I would say part of that, like the Champions League effect, played a part in this second half performance, which was really underwhelming, like was mentioned. And I don't know. I think the result was fair, even though I don't remember Napoli having like too many great chances apart from the free header by Juan. How do you call it? Juan Jesus. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. JJ. Yeah. And I think we had a lot better first half than Napoli, and we could have scored. We could have scored more, and I think in the second, at the start of second half, we played pretty well as well. We pressured them, but just couldn't score the second goal, and then it went pretty bad from there in terms of our ability to play correctly or our way. Yeah, but like I said, not too worried yet. Let's see how it's going from here.
I just want to say get the second star ready for Milan, because
Well,
that
yes.
game was so bad. That game was so bad that I failed to even wake up in time to watch it. So I don't really have anything to say about the match because, I missed the entire thing, unfortunately. And given the result and what happened, I did not feel like going back and retroactively watching it. I did watch some Benny Hill theme song moment in like the 13th minute where there was like, what was it? Like DiMarco crossed in, or maybe it was Bastoni crossed into Darmian, and like Darmian had like 90% of the goal to aim for and headed it into the one tiny area that was covered by Meret. And then the rebound fell to Lautaro, who went for some, 8-year-old playing soccer with his dad, kind of sliding kick as he always does with weak power. And then Barella blasted the rebound into Rosed, so that was the one highlight I did see. So I might be glad I kind of missed the game, but the stats looked all right from what I did see in the highlights. At least all our moments came in the first half, and yeah, it seemed to be a little bit reminiscent of the Atletico game. We could have scored more. We should have scored more. We didn't score more, and then in the end, for the second week running, we broke, or they broke, our record of not conceding after in the last 15 minutes of the game. So those records are at most like, they're not hugely important. They're just something nice, a little bit of nice trivia to hang your hat on. But for it to be broken twice in a week is a little bit annoying too.
Irfan, where do you think we went wrong last weekend against Napoli? And just once again, overall, how concerned are you as we recover from the international break and we look ahead to getting the job done in the league?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, two matches, two matches without Aslani and two not so great results. So I think we can pretty much conclusively say
this guy.
Yeah, the data shows us that without Aslani we seem to struggle. But I will say one thing that's been interesting to me to see in the last couple of matches is, yes, defensive lapses definitely late in the game, and a couple of, I think, not so great mentality in the second half of both of these matches. I wonder if there's like some mental fatigue more than there's physical fatigue. But I will say that one thing that I think we've kind of taken for granted over the course of this year is how important Thuram is for us. I feel like when Thuram is on point and he's crisp and he's efficient, we're pretty much unbeatable. In the last couple of matches, he hasn't looked that good at all. And I think we've struggled with our finishing because Lautaro is obviously a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. The attack has been disappointing the past couple matches, and I think there's this inherent bias where if you watch one team exclusively, you're going to watch them play and you're going to rue every missed chance. When in reality, footballers can't be machines; they cannot convert every opportunity. But we have been wasteful the past few matches, and it really makes you think that this team needs to go and find someone who's just a finisher, someone who can put the ball in the back of the net, because Sanchez and Thuram are not those guys. Taremi has 4 goals in the Portuguese league this year. It makes you. It's really been our primary issue this year, I'd say, along with individual defensive errors. And I want to point this out because I don't, with all the Acerbi nonsense, I feel like this isn't getting enough airtime. But the goal we conceded off a corner was the direct result of us misplaying the ball out of the back. We were doing our usual, triangular back passing of doom in our box. I think it was Hakan passed it backwards, goes out for a corner, and we immediately concede off the corner. And this is not the first time. We've had a lot of individual mental errors in the past couple of weeks, and it feels like every goal we concede is a direct result of one. So I don't know what's going on, but it just feels like a certain degree of sloppiness. I really equate it to last year with similar to Napoli, when they had such a huge lead in the table. They were champions-elect, and their quality of play really fell off towards the end of the season. With Inter, a title is not a title until it is mathematically secured. So everyone, including Jay, is especially nervous right now.
There's a
Yeah,
word.
yeah,
There's a word for the sloppiness and like the kind of malaise that you're talking about. It starts with C, and it's a 5-lettered word. Uh, can you guess what it is?
Crazy.
That's exactly right. Um, no, like all jokes aside, I'm not. You'd think someone like myself will be like hyper negative on those kinds of things, but I'm kind of. I don't get anywhere near as annoyed as at those mistakes while playing at the back as I used to, because I guess over time I've just accepted that it's an inevitable byproduct of simply playing at the back. There's not a team in the world, no matter how good they are, that doesn't have these, screw ups sometime. Barcelona do it, Bayern Munich do it, Man City do it, and yeah, like I said, it's just a inevitable runoff product. So I'm not too concerned about those, but generally, like the finishing is what worries me out of the concerns that you mentioned. We knew Turam was not the most clinical in front of goal, and that said, I didn't see the Napoli match again, but prior to the Napoli match, I was pretty impressed with what I'd seen from him, even though he hasn't scored in at least a few games in a row. But um, Lautara's the bigger concern for me. He's just looked off. He looks short of confidence. He looks tired, which is a big concern as well. And because he's not a naturally gifted finisher, at least in my opinion, and he's certainly not technical about it. He's not, and we've gone over this a million times, he's not the guy who, I mean, he can sometimes, but by and large, he's not the kind of guy who regularly has the composure to place shots with accuracy. He's just kind of like very instinctive and just snatches at shots. And, if they go in, sometimes it's kind of like in spite of himself. And if he doesn't have, I don't want to call it luck because that sounds like it's, I'm doing too much of a disservice to him. But when he's not on, we really, really pay for his inability to finish, because when he's not on, he ends up wasting a lot of our big chances that we create, and the team could only create so many good quality chances in a match, you know what I mean? And so when he's not on, they fall to him, and he just ends up shooting it straight at the keeper again and again and again. Just see the Champions League game against Oblak, and yeah, we pay the price. So that's for me the biggest concern.
So, big picture, still a comfortable lead in the league table, but you can't talk about this match without talking about what happens between Acerbi and Juan Jesus. So it's really, I don't want to wade too far into these waters, but it sounds like at this point it's really a he said. Doesn't sound like the referee's mic picked up anything. It doesn't sound like there's any witnesses who can attest to what either person said. So I've seen a large degree of takes on this, some as extreme as Acerbi's contract needs to be terminated, to others saying he's completely blameless in this. Irfan, I want to get your perspective. Just what do you think of Acerbi after this incident? If you have any personal feelings about whether or not he's lying or telling the truth, I'm open to hearing them. But really, what do you think this means for Acerbi moving forward? And you're a lawyer. What do you think the due process is here?
Did you have to go straight to the brown man?
I need the. You know what? Never mind.
I was gonna say, safe place to start with me. No, I think, like you said, it's a bit of a he said sort of thing. I can tell you a couple of things that I think are positive for Acerbi, and I think I can tell you a couple of things that worry me a little bit about the situation. So on the front end, he doesn't have a history of being this brash, abrupt kind of player who who says things and gets into it with other players. I mean, even if you leave the racial stuff out of it for a second, it's not this kind of firebrand personality on the pitch that you see. I mean, he's certainly intense, like most Italian defenders might be, but he doesn't have a history of like really getting personal with players and things like that. The other thing is, this is obviously not something that people have previously equated with him, this sort of racial animus in any capacity. So those are kind of two things that I think need to be said. The other thing is, on the pitch, I'm sure there's a lot of things that are said, and you're dealing with people talking in different languages, and things can be taken in and out of context. So I think it's hard for us sitting on the sidelines to be able to definitively say one way or another what had happened. If in fact it had been somehow proven through recordings, through other players, and through Juan Jesus himself, that he did in fact say something that was that extreme, then I do think that most of the consequences that were being discussed would be in order. Terminating a contract, though, I mean, again, I think we have to figure out just generally how we feel about mistakes or this sort of behavior, and then what the consequences should be. I mean, I think that's a much broader kind of societal discussion when it comes to like canceling and terminating versus holding people accountable and having consequences for people for doing bad things. So luckily, I think we're probably not going to have to get into that, because it seems like whatever fact finding and bureaucratic mission took place is going to result in some kind of a compromise sentence where he's probably not going to get banned for too many matches, and we won't have to really talk about the fact of what exactly was said. The thing that concerned me about this, though, mainly from Acerbi, and maybe this is kind of idealistic or dramatic, but this is the sort of situation where you would expect his teammates like Dumfries or Thuram or other black players to come out and say something about like, oh, Acerbi's not like this, or he's not this guy, or something along those lines. And the only thing I saw really was that Thuram said that, oh, this should be looked at or something. He had some very vague kind of statement that wasn't at all very supportive of Thuram. And again, I'm sorry, of Acerbi. And so I don't know if that's a reflection of, players just staying out of it, or if they make a comment, maybe they're giving more credence to it than they think it deserves. But I didn't see a lot of, teammates or others going to bat for him. And if he, in fact, was somebody who was completely incapable of this sort of thing, maybe you might have seen that a little bit more. So I don't know. That was the one thing that I was just thinking about. Of course, all of this is kind of speculation, and I think we have to be, mindful of, again, we're fans of Inter, we're fans of the players, but obviously, if someone had said something like that, I think our sensibilities would prevail here. But again, I think it's kind of a tough one in the sense that we don't really know what was said. There's a decent chance that things can be, mistranslated or mistranscribed. So I don't know. That was kind of my take. Not a super kind of coherent, definitive answer, but some thoughts.
Spoken like a true lawyer.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, and the right answer is probably to wait and just see what happens as more information comes out. But when you're on a podcast, that's not what people want. People want blistering hot takes. And when I need a blistering hot take on racial relations, I turn to Jay. So Jay, hit me with a blistering hot take.
Well, as Irfan said, regards to, look, if I'm cancelled, it's no big loss to the global football community, so there's that. And it's always hard to start or even touch upon these topics without inevitably getting dragged into some unending, much larger social debates and philosophical debates and all this kind of stuff, which is kind of pointless, at least in this platform and at this venue. What I'll say is that if it's true that he did racially abuse Juan Jesus, then that's obviously extremely disappointing from Acerbi. I agree that the calls to terminate his contract, or I've seen some Inter fans saying that you know they'd rather not win the Scudetto if that was the case. I feel like things like that are a bit extreme. Um, at which point the kind of the questioning turns to you, which is then do you condone this behavior? Not that I'm trying to make this about me or anything, but naturally when you weigh in, or I guess it becomes about everybody in a sense. And I think, look, if Acerbi was found guilty, is a 3-game punishment enough? Is it fair? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Um, like I said, cancelling his contract or whatever is in my opinion too far. But 3 games might not be going far enough. But will I take it? Yeah, absolutely. Is that some kind of doing a deal with the devil, kind of willingly benefiting from some kind of nepotism or favorable injustice? It is, but that's where I stand on this one. Uh, Ultimately, I'm not claiming to have any long-term answers for any of this, but if we get off lightly for it, then I'll take it, and if that makes me despicable, then so be it.
I want to add my short comment around this, that uh, this is, of course, again, pure speculation, but I feel like, because what we know what happened is that JJ talked after the match that it was already settled between them, and Acerbi had apologized on the pitch and so on. I feel like something was said, but now it's like like everyone has here said that it's he said. So what was said is the, I don't know. I guess it's the important thing here, but then again, I don't know how much can it affect on the verdict, or the, like, the ban, if you talk about how many games he should have as a punishment. Of course it matters there, but we won't be getting, I don't think we will ever get that said, what was what Acerbi really said to JJ. So I think it's fair he gets something, but at the same time it feels a bit disappointing that they can't settle this, like, correctly, this kind of a racism issue, which again happened in Italy. Like, there's been going on this kind of, or happening this kind of incidents throughout the years, even if they have these campaigns and like quite of, I don't know.
You mean the campaigns where we are all monkeys?
Exactly. Yeah, like last weekend it was the Keep Racism Out campaign, and then this happens. So it's a bit bad look on Italy football again. But yeah, I think it's fair Acerbi gets something, but at the same time it's a bit disappointing, because we know that he apologized, or at least JJ said that, and then afterwards Acerbi started to talk to the press on the metro station or whatever station he was. Reporter was asking questions or interviewing him, and he started to talk to the reporter, and that then it all like started from there when the JJ posted to Instagram and so on. So it's a bit disappointing, the whole case, but I think yeah, I don't know. Can I say it's okay and we move on and so on, because these racism issues aren't like helping Italian football at all. They should like be better, but but at the same time it's not just like a football issue. It's a whole cultural issue in Italy. So it's not easy to like the football community, all the football world in Italy to fix, because
to
it's not their thing alone.
not to play devil's advocate or anything, but I think some people would actually disagree that it's fair for Acerbi to get any punishment if there's no evidence one way or another. If it's purely, one man's word against another's, then taking any sides is a form of bias. And I think, thinking about it myself, I think whether you're inclined to believe Juan Jesus or Acerbi is pretty indicative of some bias here and there, I guess. And to be honest, I guess I am inclined to believe to believe Juan Jesus. I don't think, for the most part, grown men on the football pitch claim to have been racially abused without any kind of, no smoke without fire, as I say. But yeah, like I said, I think that just indicates some degree of bias. And the best case scenario, the absolute best case scenario, is that Acerbi did indeed say, "I'll beat you black and blue," and that, Juan mistook that or misheard that as a racial insult. That's the absolute best case scenario, and even then, that's not a good case scenario, but one that is essentially a fairy tale ending to this otherwise kind of shit situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say one more thing. I think it's interesting. Like, we talked a little bit about this with Andrew leading us off, and then Jay, you mentioning it as well. Like, this isn't X where we have to kind of come up with a take and distill it down to like 10 words or whatever it is. Like, there could be some nuance here, and I think morally we all agree that this type of racial abuse, whether it's like explicit or if it's implied in some way, or using distasteful words to convey this message, it's morally wrong. I think we can all agree on that. It's wrong from just like a human element. It's wrong from a sporting element. It's wrong from what Inter is all about kind of element. It's wrong from all those things. But I think the question here is more distinct. It's a question of how do you determine whether something happened, and that's more of like a fact-finding kind of mission, right? And then in the absence of definitive fact, how do you decide culpability and appropriate punishment, right? What's the scale? And I think this is a question, frankly, that society has not yet figured out. So as intelligent as all four of us are, and as diverse as all four of us are, I think we're going to have a hard time answering that question. But I do think that it's worthy of discussion, and I think it's worthy of some nuance. And you can't give someone where the facts are in dispute a punishment that you would otherwise give somebody where the facts aren't in dispute, right?
Yeah.
And you can't give someone who might have misinterpreted something or said something out of emotion and then immediately apologize the same kind of treatment you would give somebody who spoke in animus deliberately and did that. I mean, we have that distinction in criminal law all the time, right, in the U.S. So it's one of those things where I think it's important for us to discuss the facts and the nuances. Everyone will probably have an opinion, and that's okay. And I think what's also important here is that we look at this as objectively as we can. I mean, we're all Inter fans. We have a very successful global podcast on Inter, but we can still look at this kind of objectively and say, how would we react if the person that was alleged to have said something like this was, Theo Hernandez or Dusan Vlahovic or Ciro Immobile? How would we act if one of those guys had said this? And to be perfectly honest, I feel like I would feel the same way, which is if the facts are in dispute, there's some kind of apology that's been given, and there's a reasonable explanation for what was said, then I think it's more about getting the two players on board and making sure they're on the same page. And then, yes, you have to punish somebody, but it doesn't need to be something so extreme. Like, you don't need to make Acerbi the scapegoat for all that's wrong on racial relations when it comes to Serie A. And obviously, that's going to be an inquiry that takes place and they can figure all that out. But even objectively speaking, if the facts are in dispute and there's a reasonable explanation for what was said, 3 games seems fairly reasonable to me. If the facts weren't in dispute and if he did, in fact, racially abuse, then 3 games was probably not enough. But what is enough at that point? And I think those are questions that haven't necessarily been answered, or there's not a real kind of consensus answer on those.
Yeah, I mean, again, just purely hypothetically, if Acerbi was entirely innocent, then giving him any punishment would be a farce. You know what I mean? So I agree entirely that in these kinds of murky waters, erring on the side of caution is the best way to go. And I don't know, like, you can't say this without sounding like you're being pandering or something. That's not the intention. But again, there's probably no smoke without fire. And again, Acerbi himself did say that he apologized to Juan Jesus after the match, and he wouldn't have apologized if he didn't do anything. But again, what that thing is not known and will likely never be known, as you said. So in this instance, being cautious and erring on the side of safety is probably to give him a short ban. So yeah, that's all I can really add to that.
We're joined now by Bernhard. Bernhard is very active on Twitter. I think that's how we came across his expertise on all things financial for the club. Bernhard, really appreciate you joining today. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm fine. How about you guys?
Doing well. With the international break, we thought now would be a great time to do a reset on the club's finances. It feels like every day in the newspapers, there is a new article talking about what's going on with Suning and their loan from Oaktree. Yeah. So I think that's the major question everyone has right now is, what do you think is going to happen with this loan from Oaktree that's grown due sooner by the day?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's really important to make people understand that there's a difference for the Oaktree loan and the debt that Inter has. So it's really important that everyone out there understands the Oaktree money that Inter, which is not true, has to pay back. So it is the controlling entity beyond Inter. It is, in fact, it is Grand Tower, which is our majority share owner. So they have to pay back that loan. They make that money. And Grand Tower, in turn, of course, is possessed by Sang in the end. So there's another couple of structures and holdings in between. But in the end, the debt of Oaktree that we have to pay back Oaktree is not Inter's debt. So we all know that by now, I think. But maybe some listeners out there are not sure about that. So in the end, it is Tsang's father, Tsang Ching-dong, who has to pay back that money. 3 years ago, he was lending out those 275 million euros, and he has to pay back, because it's a payment in kind loan, which is compounding interest every year. He has to pay back 380 to 385 million or something like that in about 2 months, so at the 20th of May this year. And well, what there is to add is that if they don't pay that back, it's not that the Tsang family loses Inter for nothing. There is an additional clause in that agreement that Oaktree would have to pay some kind of a fair share, where a third party would make a valuation of Inter, what's it worth, and then they would have to add some cash to that. To that overtaking. So they would have to pay for really receiving Inter in the end. And how much it is really open right now. It could be 100 million, could be 300 million, we don't know. But something right there. And if that would happen, then you have to know that the Inter bondholders, because Inter has an outstanding bonds in the area of 415 million euros, those bondholders would have the right to use a special clause within these contracts where they could sell those bonds to the new owner. Because if there is a change of control, so Inter would have new owners, they have an option to put those bonds back to Inter. And in that case, immediately Oaktree is more or less also having to pay back those 415 million euros. Or actually, it's a little bit more because they would have to pay a little extra. But so before they let that really happen, they will have to be aware that they would have to pay up first to Zhang family and then to the bondholders of Inter. So I'm not sure if they're really so interested in having that deal, because they are not like franchise owners. They're not really common to that world of sports, you know. So to put it straight, I would say I don't think they are really interested to get Inter. They really would like or would prefer to get their money back, because it's a nice profit on that. I actually do not think that they have a big incentive, though, to make another extension of that loan. I mean, it seems that the most likely option so far has been that Zhang tries to renegotiate that deal and make it extendable for 1 or maybe 2 years and pay even more interest. Let's say 12 or maybe even 15% per year, to add that up and compound again, and in the end pay $450 million or something, or euros, to make that payment in the end. But it doesn't seem likely that Oaktree wants this to happen. So they try to pressure, in my opinion, Zhang in a position where he gets the refinancing somewhere else. And that's actually, for me, the most likely option out there right now. So I don't think Oaktree is going to refinance that deal and extend the duration. I do think maybe they get somewhere else some refinancing. They don't have to refinance everything, because there is some cash left in the bank accounts of Grand Tower. So they would have some, I think it was some 100 million would still be available right now. So they only need to find the remainder, to be clear, but not everything. And I don't think that you can find someone who is really willing to buy the club in that period of time, because we don't really have had any news that there would be some really good buyer out there right now trying to buy Inter. There was no reliable source reporting that, let's put it that way. So I think the
PIF
most
has their eyes on Milan.
Yeah, they have their eyes on everywhere. I think they're now even rumored to buy Monza. What was the latest rumor? So we don't know, but I think the most likely option is get that money somewhere else. The second most likely option is okay, let's try to sell it, and only the least likely option would be really failing to pay back in terms of the Oaktree loan and losing the club to Oaktree for free. But in that case, it's not bad for the club, just to be clear. But we can dig there a little deeper later on if you want.
How does the so the creditors for Zhang, I can't remember what they were called, but that basically the company that Zhang was dodging, some Hong Kong court, ordered him to pay 250 million, and basically he just kind of like fucked off or something, and pretended it never happened. Now they've been recognized in Italy, apparently. So there's nowhere to hide for him. How does that affect him or us?
Well, that affects him personally. That does not really affect Inter. I mean, there is I'm not sure, has it been China Construction Bank or some big Chinese bank has been on the other side of that deal. And they've actually lent Suning Holdings some money. And the problem here is that Zhang Jr., it's really Steven, who was giving a personal guarantee for that loan, which the company of his father has taken. So it is really his problem, because that's a personal guarantee he gave. He was, as he stated in front of court, he was not really aware that he did that like 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. So this is something going back quite long. But it is important to understand that this is not something that does in fact inflict on Inter's financial situation. What they are trying to do now is, and this is kind of ridiculous, what they have now in Italy with the ruling of the court in Milan is they would actually have the right to seize property of Stephen Chang Jr. So they want to try to get Inter to pay the president of Inter, which is Stephen Sang. They want to get Inter to pay him a salary, because he's not getting a salary as the president of Inter because his father is the owner. But what the Milan pages are writing is, so our cucinastri of our bad cousins, so they are writing they can seize the property because Inter is Sang's property. Yes, it is Sang, but it's Sang Shindong and not Sang Stephen. So it's the property of his father and not the property of Stephen Sang. He's just the president. And what they would have is the right to seize, maybe a car or maybe some other property that he really personally owns in Inter. Or if he gets paid a salary, they could seize his salary. But they can't seize, in my opinion, of this legal aspect, they can't seize Inter.
So they might be able to seize his small Fiat he's been driving there around.
The Fiat apart, yeah. He shouldn't be driving a Fiat anyway, so, or a Ferrari something of that house. No, but that's something I do really not see a possibility being there, and they just have no chance, because the owner of Inter is Grand Tower, and Grand Tower in turn is majority owned by some other companies, and in the end are owned by Sang Shindong and not Stephen Sang. So there's no legal basis that this has any effect on Inter, in my opinion. Well, except of course that he gets more pressure to sell because he needs money. That's on some different page, but not on our financial situation.
Right, makes sense. So as you look at Inter specifically, it always seems like the financials for the club are top of mind, more so than a lot of clubs in other countries. So this year we had a bit of an underwhelming Champions League run in many respects, not nearly as profitable as last year. What a lot of fans are wondering is, will our lack of progress in the Champions League impact our summer transfer window in a way where we're now looking at selling key players or unable to make purchases? So as you look at the club's financials heading into next year, do you think this lost Champions League revenue is going to come back to haunt us?
Well, I would actually put it the other way around. Last year has been an exceptionally good year, because it's not, you can't expect Inter to play in a Champions League final. And as we have seen, and you might be aware, the Champions League final has really been a money machine for Inter. So to put some numbers and some figures out there, playing in the Champions League final and even losing it has been worth about 100 million euros for Inter in terms of TV money. In addition to that, you get some nice ticket sales, because you have visitors at the stadium that pay big prices for their tickets. And if you want to find out what we lose out compared to last season on those two positions, so on the TV money and on the ticket sales, it sums up to roughly 50 million euros. So we have about 35 million less in TV money. And we do have about, a little 15 to 17 million, something like that, less in ticket sales, because we miss out on two home games and the final, where we would also have been able to sell some tickets, of course. Like I've been to Istanbul last year myself, so the tickets were cheap. I got it from Inter directly for 70 euros. Everything, the rest, the flight and the hotel and everything else was like 10 to 15 times more expensive than the ticket itself. So this was pretty cheap, but you can get some more expenses too, of course.
So based on these figures, do you see that we need to sell players this summer because of the lack of same kind of revenues from Champions League?
We are not obliged to sell the next summer. No, I don't see that. And to explain why, I want to first tackle a little bit on this season's finances. So as I see the season panning out now, with the big variables are not too variable anymore, since we're out in every competition. So we seem to have the Scudetto locked. So this would bring us to something between minus 30 to plus 0 plus 5 million in a scenario where we reach which could still develop a little bit in depending on the sponsor boni and how much our players earn from bonuses and so on. So, but my base case scenario for this season is that we make a loss of 25 million euros. So if we would have advanced against Atletico Madrid, we would have been round about 0. We would have not made a big loss on that season. Now it's 25 million, which isn't too bad, which is much less than the past seasons. And now looking forward to next season, we have to add some factors. The new Champions League model with one home game more and the new league modus is giving us about a 30% raise in revenues from Champions League. So if we can get out of the league or the group stage next season, we will at least have 70 to 80 million euros alone from the Champions League TV money. We have more home games from Champions League next season, which are bringing in some nice money. So we can add our revenues from the Champions League next season. We can also add much money on our sponsorship deals because Paramount isn't paying a lot of sponsorship money. They do good stuff. They do good advertisement for us. So it's really some nice cooperation those past months. But if those new sponsor rumors with Betsson, the Swedish gambling and betting company, are to be true, and they should be adding like another 20 million euros to our revenue stream, that would be nice. So, and making those calculations and adding that we will also play in the Club World Cup, which should give us another 50 to 60 million if we are not really good in that competition. So that's the base case to get in quite on a low level. Then we should be able to make a positive financial year with a sale of players of around 25 million euros in capital gains. So, for example, if we sell Dumfries, we should be fine and even be in a positive territory next year. And even in a not really optimistic case, that means we don't win any Scudetto. We just get to place 2 or 3 maybe. We don't make any cup final. We just make it to the semi-final. We maybe win the Super Cup, but nothing else. So in that scenario, we would be around 0 or maybe slightly positive next season.
You mentioned this new format to the Champions League, and there's also the Club World Cup. And I think a lot of fans are concerned that our squad is too thin, that we don't have enough impact players off the bench to handle the extra load of matches. Do you think there's money in the budget to be able to go out and add 1 or 2 impact players that actually cost transfer fees? And we all know Zielinski and Taremi are going to arrive, but do you think there's money available to actually go out and make purchases? Or if the goal is to achieve profitability, do you think we're gonna have to stick to the free transfers and or once again selling players?
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. The typical Marotta deals, they will not go away as long as he is with us. That's what he's known for. That's where he is good at. He will not spend big money on any player unless we really sell one of our stars. So you need to understand that we are in a situation that if there is some really high offer coming around the corner for one of our core players, for one of our stars, of our beloved players, which we would never sell, then Inter might be in a have to sell it. Because if someone is coming along with 100 million offer for Barella, they need to sell him. If someone is offering 150 million for Lautaro Martinez, they have to sell him. If someone is offering 50 million for, I don't know, Thuram, for example, then they might keep him. But knowingly that he has arrived for 0 transfer fee, that would all be plus Valenza, so would all be capital gains. So they might even think about that. It doesn't have to be an insane offer. It just has to be a financially really reasonable offer or a good offer. Then we might even sell, even if we don't have to. So,
just want to say, I would sell Lautaro for far less than 150 million. But continue, please.
Yeah, I mean, to make what's his valuation? What's a fair valuation for him? I would say if we get the same amount that we got for Lukaku back in the day, 110 to 120 million euros, they will definitely think about it. And that's something that we might not want, but we have seen that the club has the knowledge and has the personnel and the management to handle those situations. So I think whatever they do, it's always like, first of all, it's everything is bad and everything is shit, and Inter and the management and everything can go to hell. But then in the end, they just thrive again, and they have done a really good work in really tight financial constraints. So I think we need to trust them a little bit.
If we go back to the revenues and costs, how do you see these contract extensions we need to sign, like Inzaghi, Lautaro, Barella? They will like add more costs to our current squad. Like we are not even adding more players; we are just keeping our current players, and the costs will go up. So how do you see that this situation regarding like next summer, because it's a bit related to the next year and the financial year starting on July, and how will this, like, does this kind of situation forces us to sell, or you still think we don't have to sell?
No, I've modeled that all into my models. I've been thinking about this all the time. I mean, what you need to understand in terms of contracts is that you have two big cost factors on the balance sheet of Inter for in terms of players. One side is the wages, the salary, so what we pay them every month. And you need to know about the gross numbers, because especially in Italy, there's a difference between some special tax benefits like the Decreto Crescita, I'm sure you heard of. So you need to really look at the gross numbers. So what are they really costing the club on a monthly basis? And in addition to that, you have to know about the amortization. So when a player on a football club arrives, you typically have like a transfer fee, let's call it some 10 million euros. And if he gets a 5-year contract, you have to amortize this 10 million transfer fee through that 5 years. So annually, you add 2 million costs in addition to his salary or his wages. And for players like Barella or players like Bastoni, where we actually spend a lot of money as well, you have the one side, the salary is going up, but on the other side, the amortization is going down. Because if you have, like, let's say 50% of his transfer fee left on the balance sheet, and you give him an extension of 2 or 3 years, the annual cost of that contract is in fact going down on the amortization side. But on players like Lautaro, which has barely left anything to amortize on the balance sheet, and Inzaghi, who has not amortizing anything, as he's the coach, we didn't buy him. So that's something like, of course, there's only the costs going up. But I factor that in. We can handle that as long as Lautaro is staying with his 10 million net per season asking price, we will be able to afford it. But it makes it more likely to sell him, because if he's having like 10 good games from now on until the end of the season, and then by July 1st he says, "Nah, okay, forget about it, I want 12 million net now," then the chances are getting better that we really sell him, of course. That would influence us, but you don't need to be worried about that. It's really in a scale where we can handle that.
Okay, and regarding this current season, your estimation was that we're gonna make like around 25 million loss, and that this financial year ends at June, so we don't have to sell before July. We don't have to sell anyone either, so we just eat the loss and go on.
Yeah, exactly. We have time in terms of our financial fair play settlement agreement with the UEFA, so we don't need to make a profit this season. They look at the longer time frame, and that's not a real big problem. But to be transparent, in that 25 million loss, I factored in, for example, that we sell another player from our youth system, maybe for around 5 million plus Valenza until the end of the year. So that's what I expect, that they do some business before the year ends, before our fiscal financial year ends. So I expect them to do something small, like some Primavera player who gets sold, and we maybe have the control and have a future buyback option or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. But the 25 million right now loss, factors in everything we know right now, and plus another 5 million from anyone, which is not much.
Okay, so that makes sense. I guess there have been a lot of talks about selling some players in our academy. I mean, I think is Fabian the one who's available? Like, do we have a buyback clause on him? Is that right?
Yes, we have a buyback option for, I think 12 million was the number, and next season, not this summer, but next summer. So he should be at Bologna maybe for another season, because I don't think it makes much sense to buy him back this summer if he's really having a good development, and maybe you get some agreement with Bologna. Maybe they say, okay, let's wait another year and make it 50 million, but therefore you make him play. So I think they have a good relationship with Bologna, and the important thing for him is to play, and I don't see where he can really fit in right now at our squad to get that amount of play time he really should have. So
Could Bologna sell him? Are they not allowed? No. They can't sell him?
No, they can't sell him. Or they are allowed to sell him next season, but we would still have the buyback option. They can't sell him right now.
Sure. I wanted to ask, I guess it can be difficult to kind of separate between the club's debts, the club's losses, and then the debt of like the ownership, which you spoke upon in your opening kind of response. But I guess for this club to, I mean, look, wiping the club's debts is borderline impossible considering it's like $1 billion. But I guess to get to something resembling financial stability, how many more years of austerity mode do we have to operate in?
Well, you have to distinguish talking about debt. The really concerning debt we have, or the really negatively impacting debt we have, is the bond. So we have 450 million outstanding amount of a bond, which we pay 6.75% of annual interest. We're going to pay back this bond in February 27, but we start to pay back a little bit, like 4 to 5 million every 6 months from June onwards. This is the debt that really weighs on our balance sheet, because we have those, as I said, interests to pay, and the profit and loss I was talking about, amounting to 25 negatively a loss next June. This also includes around 40 million of interest payments. 30 or a little shy of 30 million of that interest payment is caused by that bond, and another 8, 9, 10 million are caused by, let's say it's more or less a fictional number, because it's actually the interests we have to pay Grand Tower. So to make it a little more complicated, Grand Tower is the company that took up the oaktree loan money, and they have forwarded this money to Inter. And for the forwarded money, which is like 150, 170 million or whatever, to Inter, they actually would be entitled to receive 8% of interest for the first installments and 11% of interest for the last installments. But Sang and Oaktree has waived on all of those capital repayments. So Inter did not have to pay back any capital, which means this has been handled like injecting fresh capital. It has been the same like Juventus does when they raise new capital on the capital markets. It is like a capital increase. They just do it with a debt instrument, but in the end, it's the same effect. It has been made to balance our books, and therefore they would be entitled to get interest. But as said, they waived it. So this 40 million I spoke about is in fact only 30, because you can expect Sang to waive on those interests and the capital payments. So the really interesting thing now is, if we get a new owner, and as I have mentioned, if it is Oaktree or someone else, doesn't matter, if there is a change of control, those new guys would have to pay back this 450 million debt in terms of the bond loan, or the debt of the bond debt. And when this happens, Inter is in a much more stable financial situation, because from this point onwards, we don't have to pay 40 or 30 million in interest every year. So this would be going back to the budget, because you can then spend it for something else, like players, salaries, wages, or buying someone every single year. So we are not really that far away from financial sustainability, because from now on in the future, you will have sponsorship revenues that are 30 to 40 million higher than the previous season, like in talking about 22, 23. This year we are getting higher because last year Digital Bits didn't pay us anything. So we are getting already higher this year. And we will get even more money from sponsors next year. We will get more money from the Champions League TV deal, from the new standard that we have in the Champions League, and so on. So this adds up to really make us, I would say we would be close to financial sustainability if we have new owners from 25, 26 onwards. Then we wouldn't be obliged to sell a big player every second year. But if Sang stays, and if the Sang family stays in charge of Inter, and we still need to pay back that money of the bond debt, then of course we would need to sell a player every 2 or 3 years. A good one.
A football fan can dream of a stage where they're not constantly worried about their club's finances.
Yeah. So this 450 million debt we have, it's due on
February
2027, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if we hit that deadline, we need to refinance that, and by then the interest rate will be probably higher than the 6.75 or something.
No, you have to divide that in interest rates for risk-free interest rates and credit spread. The thing is that we made that deal from the last time, which was handled by Goldman & Sachs in February 22. We repaid the old bonds because we already had ones 1 year earlier, and they made that deal in the middle of February 22, so just before the interest rates skyrocketed around the world. So this was really good business from Inter to ensure that 6.75%. Right now, you can go to Bloomberg and see where those bonds are trading. So back then we had a credit spread, which is the equivalent of the risk we have as a club in financial terms. So how does the market assess our risk? Which was about 600, no, it was 700 something credit spread at 7% above the riskless rate. And right now it is 4.3% above the riskless rate for a 3 or 4 year horizon. So right now, interest rates are going back down again. Swiss National Bank has just this week lowered their interest rates. The Fed, so the US Federal Reserve Bank, will follow suit, I think, in June. The European Central Bank will follow suit also in June. And the market expects those central banks to lower their interest rates by the end of the year, somewhere between 75 basis points to 100 basis points, so up to 1% lower within the next 10, 12 months. And that's going onwards then. So you can expect rates going a little lower again, and in combination with a lower credit spread, because the business model of our club is looking better. The risk is lower than it was like during the COVID pandemic. You can expect that a new financing deal would maybe even be cheaper. So if you're right now trying to get money on a risk-free rate in euro for 10 to 15 years, you have a risk-free rate of 2.6, 2.7%. And on that, you can add the credit spread. So you could actually have that money for a much longer period at around the same cost of money, if that makes sense.
Okay, we're going pretty deep with this one, but yeah, it makes sense, and sounds a bit more reassuring. if we go to that route, that Jections will be here in 2027. Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about the Sang family, I think there's one thing where you really have to talk about them not being able to support Inter with cash is just simply wrong. That's what they do. They risk to lose Inter for close to nothing because they are waiving on the capital they made via a shareholder loans to Inter. So you can look it up. They have put in some 200, 300 million in the last couple of years and not seen anything back. So they are there and they are supporting the club. I mean, it is not as publicly as for example, the Agnelli family does with Juventus, because they always have those nice capital increases, but it's pretty much the same. And on the other hand, you have to say, if they wouldn't have, for example, made Marotta the manager, and haven't added Antonello to be our CEO, and have hired Inzaghi and Conte first and stuff like that, I'm not sure where our club would have been. So if we would have not made those changes, if we would have not made sales like Icardi, not made sales like Lukaku, I'm not sure if Inter would be better off without the same family right now. Of course, you can absolutely find enough arguments to say, okay, it's time to change, because if you can't support the club anymore with money, and we need money, then it's maybe better to part ways for both parties.
Well, Bernhard, we really appreciate your expert financial analysis. If our listeners want to, follow you along, I think you have a Twitter account you're pretty active on. What's the handle for your Twitter accounts?
Yeah, that's true. That's at Sirphi, SASIRPHI, like Sir Philadelphia or something like that, PHI.
Awesome.
We'll have it in the description of the episode, so you can find the link there.
Yes, and Miko will tag you as well when we tweet out the episode, so all our listeners, or X out the episode, whatever it's called these days, but all you listening will be able to find Bernhard that way. But yeah, Bernhard, really appreciate you joining today.
Thank you very much, Bernhard.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was fun talking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
See
you.
you soon, mate.
So let's pivot and talk about what this means for the upcoming match against Empoli. We play Empoli on next Monday night. And there's been a few injuries over the international break, so it looks like Sommer tweaked his ankle. He's going to be out, which means it's Audero time. You have De Vrij, who got hurt with the Netherlands. Acerbi very well might be suspended for this match. And as you may recall, we had a listener question a couple weeks ago about who would you start at center back if both Acerbi and De Vrij were out. Apparently, I think that listener has a crystal ball at home where he sees into the future, because now we're staring right at the situation. But yeah, hosting Empoli. As you all recall, we beat Empoli on the wonder strike from DeMarco back last year. It was far from a convincing performance. And now you have this really must-win game where everything's going wrong. We really need to steady things. We need to get all 3 points and just, show everyone, yes, we're winning the league. So, Miko, what do you think heading into this Empoli match? And I guess, assuming Acerbi and De Vrij are both unavailable, what are you doing with the defense?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how they're gonna approach, or Inzaghi is gonna approach this, because I think De Vrij situation is unclear still. I think he's heading back to Italy, or maybe he's there already, and they're gonna do the checks tomorrow, I think. And if he is out against Empoli, I think Pisek will take the central spot. That's how I believe at this point. It might be completely wrong, but that's my prediction at this point. I think he can do it, but of course in 1 week's training it won't be smooth for sure. But luckily, at least for me, the match isn't like super hard. It's home match. It's against Empoli, who is unfortunately fighting for the relegation. So they are playing for real here. But I think our quality will be enough anyway, so that the match won't be like super hard and Pisek will be a big liability or anything. But that's my guess what's gonna happen if those are both normal central defenders are out.
So Gazzetta, as you all know, publishes their probable formations, and they don't tend to be as reliable as Sky. But I want to point out that their proposed formation for this game has Bastoni as the central center back and Augusto as the left center back. Augusto, of course, expected to return from injury. He's been out for, of course, the Atletico and Napoli matches. Jay, what would you think of that team configuration, and how do you feel with Aldero between the sticks?
Bad. Sorry, you're saying Bastoni in the middle and who on the left?
Augusto at left center back, Bastoni in the middle.
Is Augusto even?
He's going. Inzaghi said he's going to be back. We don't know if he's fit to start, but this is just Gazzetta speculating.
Sure. I mean, I'd rather not see DeMarco at left centre back, and even then, that would raise questions of who do we play at left wing back, and if that's the case, then it's going to be Darmian. But sorry, if that's the case, then you may as well just play Darmian at left centre back and play DeMarco in his regular position. I guess you can just play Bisek in the middle, Pavard on the right, and Bastoni on the left would be my preference. That way, at least you get to keep 2 out of the 3 players in their regular positions. And while Bisek tends to be a bit more fluid in his positioning than De Vrij, for example, I feel like, or rather, no, that's not a good way of expressing that. I'll say that De Vrij is more metronomic in his passing than Bisek, or at least from what we've seen from Bisek so far. Bisek likes to take a bit more risk and pass forward and all this kind of stuff, whereas De Vrij tends to be like a second kind of playmaker in that central centre back position. So yeah, there's a difference in style there, but it's not like De Vrij doesn't make forward runs. We've seen him do it quite often, so I'm not against the idea of playing Bisek in the middle. And honestly, with Pavard being a little bit suspect under corners and high balls recently, I always prefer that the middle centre back of a back 3 is at least the strongest. I mean, you'd kind of assume they'd be the strongest defensively, but if nothing else, at least the strongest aerially speaking. So, and I don't think Bastoni is a great header of the ball either compared to Acerbi, for example. So I personally would prefer Bastoni on the left, Bisek in the middle, and Pavard on the right. And I think any other iteration than that is just asking for trouble. Pavard in the middle might be better with his passing, but too soft in the air. Same with Bastoni. And then if you do that with Bastoni, again, Carlos Augusto could be drafted in, but I think that we run the risk of not having enough wingbacks on the bench, to play in the left wingback position. And I do not want to see Darmian there ever again, to be honest. So unless Inzaghi is planning on making use of Buchanan, which I wouldn't be against either, although I heard he was pretty lame against Napoli. There's all a series of permutations, but my preferred is Bastoni, Bisek, Pavard.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say, I think we've been struggling. We've been creating chances. We've been struggling to put them away, but we haven't been scoring the way we have previously. And one of the best aspects of our system and the way we play is that link up between DeMarco and Bastoni. I mean, that's a special connection. It's complete, like just dynamite on that side. I would be very loath to move that away. As good as Augusto is, and as much as I value him, there's something special about DeMarco and Bastoni on that side. I wouldn't move Bastoni into the middle. Bisek, I think, deserves a chance in the middle. The only thing you'd have to worry about with him is to just kind of keep him home more often and not let him just kind of go up the pitch. And I think that's a easily, trainable and remindable. That's not a word, but it's something that could be reminded to him, explain to him to just stay at home more because you're in the center.
You just give him an explicit instructions. It's like
Yeah.
any professional gets
Yeah,
instructions
exactly.
from their boss. Do this task, and you just gotta fucking do it. So
Exactly. But with his heading capability and his like kind of defensive soundness, I would prefer him in the middle. Pavard, I think, has been lacking a little bit in form recently, and I would just kind of keep him in his spot. I wouldn't rely on him to be the kind of primary defender in a lot of cases. Plus, he's also useful going up, and so giving him some more freedom on that right side, I think, is ideal for us. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I would have Bissek starting in the middle. I definitely wouldn't put Bastoni in the middle. If we had to put somebody in the middle other than Bissek, I would probably go with Pavard. But I think there's some issues with that, as Jay mentioned, and as I mentioned. I'm not too worried about Odero starting. I think Odero's pretty decent. And, it's not like he hasn't played at all. So I think he'll be okay. Empoli doesn't strike me as a team that's, really going to put us under a lot of pressure. I think more likely than anything, we'll try to beat ourselves by just being completely inefficient in front of goal. So hopefully that doesn't happen and we can kind of break that little streak that we're on and actually put in some goals and win. Also, I would say we should probably start Empoli's former son, Aslani, and have him on the pitch since, he did score against us. Maybe he can score against his former team. And, that'll be good because, as I mentioned before, 2 matches without Aslani and 2 disappointing results.
I forgot what the taste of victory felt like.
Aslani can remind you.
Miko, as you look at this Empoli team, is there anyone you're concerned about, the player to watch on their team, who you're maybe spending more of your attention on, or as you're game planning for them?
Destro.
Yeah, I guess so. Now that Baldance is gone, I don't even.
Oh, they have the former Milan prodigy Niang.
Okay.
Long-time forum favorite, Cherry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have any names anymore. Baldance is my boy, but he's now at Roma, so nothing left. Nothing left for me.
Actually, I think the guy Ken Biaggi is he a former Inter youth? Am I just imagining that? No, he's a former Atalanta. Never mind. No, he's former Atalanta.
He's on loan from Atalanta. I don't think he's a youth player.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get into some predictions for this match. Miko, if you want to lead us off.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to the 4-0 record now. So I'm gonna get 4-0.
For Empoli?
No. It's the Inter way to win 4-0 or then no wins at all.
All right, Irfan?
I'm going to go 2-0 Inter win. Lautaro gets on the score sheet and Aslani scores a late goal. 2-0.
Jay?
Yeah, I think this is really hard. As I mentioned, or as we all kind of spent the entire episode discussing, we are in the middle of a all-time great Scudetto bottle job. So everything's against us. Disappointing elimination from the Champions League, and then a energy-deprived performance against Napoli, again conceding at the death. Then some injuries ailing us, including our reliable goalkeeper, and then the whole Acerbi racism incident. So, yeah, we're really against it. And we're also playing last, I think, in the match day. So, there's kind of a little bit of pressure on us. It's a really difficult game, and I think it's a really difficult game to call. It all depends on how much belief you have in this team's mental strength. If you believe that, the team can cope with the injury/suspensions to the centre backs, Acerbi of De Vrij, and to the goalkeeper, and has the mental kind of solidity to not allow this potential racism ban to create any discord in the locker room or whatever, and not let the disappointment from the Champions League kind of affect them, then if you believe the team is strong enough to kind of bounce back from that with a victory here, then, or rather, you either believe that or you don't. And I'm going to be optimistic and say that we squeak out a 1-0 win. I'm going for a Mkhitaryan goal in the 22nd minute, just like his number. But I do think, unfortunately, the rest of the rest of the match will be a bit of a shit show, as we're still not fully recovered, is what I think. While we're on that, I'll also give you my hot tip of the week, and it's for Fiorentina Milan. I'm going Fiorentina 0, Milan 3, and also Napoli Atalanta. I'm going a 2-2 draw.
Well, I feel better now. That Milan's probably going to drop points this week because this segment I'm rebranding as Jay's Ice Cold Betting Tips.
My betting tips have been, ballpark or close, to come into fruition. So, anyway, maybe
it's like Jay's lukewarm betting tips.
It's more like Jay's general betting advice. But I'll tell you what, we were so close for that 1-1 against Atletico, but fate would have it another way. And in any instance, we've covered ourselves legally speaking, so it doesn't really matter how incorrect my tips are.
Yes, no liability to us whatsoever.
Yeah, Jay's tips are always up for debate. I'm going with a 1-0 as well. Empoli are the lowest scoring team in this league. They often lose 1-0. I've just looked back at a few of their past fixtures. There's a lot of 1-0 losses in there. I'm going to say the trend continues. I just don't see how this team scores against us, and I like to think we can eke out a goal. For the goal scorer, of course, it will not be Lautaro, who's in the middle of a full-blown scoring drought. Yes. It's going to have to come from one Denzel Dumfries. It will be some ridiculous. He holds onto the ball for way too long, does something we're all screaming collectively, don't do it, and he scores by accident.
And
I'll take it.
Lifts his shirt up to have a sign. I have a message for support of Acerbi.
I was going to say condemning Acerbi, but...
Well, that's why the league's going to have all their players wear black masks, I was told, anyway. This league. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Like Miko said, we'll leave Bernhard's Twitter handle in the description of the episode if you're interested in following him. Of course, if you are not aware, we also have a Twitter account. Miko will also leave that in the episode description. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
All right.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.